The Secretary-General shall act in that capacity in all meetings of the General Assembly, of the Security Council, of the Economic and Social Council, and of the Trusteeship Council, and shall perform such other functions as are entrusted to him by these organs. The Secretary-General shall make an annual report to the General Assembly on the work of the organization. Article 99. The Secretary-General may bring to the attention of the Security Council any matter which in his opinion may threaten the maintenance of international peace and security. Article 100. In the performance of their duties the Secretary-General and the staff shall not seek or receive instructions from any government or from any other authority external to the organization. They shall refrain from any action which might reflect on their position as international officials responsible only to the organization. Each member of the United Nations undertakes to respect the exclusively international character of the responsibilities of the Secretary-General and the staff, and not to seek to influence them in the discharge of their responsibilities. Article 101. The staff shall be appointed by the Secretary-General under regulations established by the General Assembly. Appropriate staff shall be permanently assigned to the Economic and Social Council, the Trusteeship Council, and, as required, to other organs of the United Nations. These staffs shall form a part of the Secretariat. The paramount consideration in the employment of the staff and in the determination of the conditions of service shall be the necessity of securing the highest standards of efficiency, competence, and integrity. Due regard shall be paid to the importance of recruiting the staff on as wide a geographical basis as possible. Chapter 16. Miscellaneous Provisions. Article 102. Every treaty and every international agreement entered into by any member of the United Nations after the present charter comes into force shall as soon as possible be registered with the Secretariat and published by it. No party to any such treaty or international agreement which has not been registered in accordance with the provisions of paragraph 1 of this article may invoke that treaty or agreement before any organ of the United Nations. Article 103. In the event of a conflict between the obligations of the members of the United Nations under the present charter and their obligations under any other international agreement, their obligations under the present charter shall prevail. Article 104. The organization shall enjoy in the territory of each of its members such legal capacity as may be necessary for the exercise of its functions and the fulfillment of its purposes. Article 105. The organization shall enjoy in the territory of each of its members such privileges and immunities as are necessary for the fulfillment of its purposes. Representatives of the members of the United Nations and officials of the organization shall similarly enjoy such privileges and immunities as are necessary for the independent exercise of their functions in connection with the organization. The General Assembly may make recommendations with a view to determining the details of the application of paragraphs 1 and 2 of this article, or may propose conventions to the members of the United Nations for this purpose. Chapter 17. Transitional Security Arrangements. Article 106. Pending the coming into force of such special agreements referred to in Article 43, as in the opinion of the Security Council enable it to begin the exercise of its responsibilities under Article 42, the parties to the Four-Nation Declaration, signed at Moscow, the 30th of October, 1943, and France, shall, in accordance with the provisions of paragraph 5 of that declaration, consult with one another, and as occasion requires with other members of the United Nations, with a view to such joint action on behalf of the organization as may be necessary for the purpose of maintaining international peace and security. Article 107. Nothing in the present charter shall invalidate or preclude action in relation to any state which during the Second World War has been an enemy of any signatory to the present charter, taken or authorized as a result of that or by the governments having responsibility for such action. Chapter 18. Amendments. Article 108. Amendments to the present charter shall come into force for all members of the United Nations when they have been adopted by a vote of 2/3 of the members of the General Assembly and ratified in accordance with their respective constitutional processes by 2/3 of the members of the United Nations, including all the permanent members of the Security Council. Article 109. a general conference of the members of the United Nations, for the purpose of reviewing the present charter may be held at a date and place to be fixed by a 2/3 vote of the members of the General Assembly and by a vote of any 9 members of the Security Council. Each member of the United Nations shall have 1 vote in the conference. Any alteration of the present charter recommended by a 2/3 vote of the conference shall take effect when ratified in accordance with their respective constitutional processes by 2/3 of the members of the United Nations, including all the permanent members of the Security Council. If such a conference has not been held before the 10th annual session of the General Assembly following the coming into force of the present charter, the proposal to call such a conference shall be placed on the agenda of that session of the General Assembly, and the conference shall be held if so decided by a majority vote of the members of the General Assembly and by a vote of any 7 members of the Security Council. Chapter 19. Ratification and Signature. Article 110. The present charter shall be ratified by the signatory states in accordance with their respective constitutional processes. The ratifications shall be deposited with the government of the United States of America, which shall notify all the signatory states of each deposit as well as the Secretary General of the organization when he has been appointed. The present charter shall come into force upon the deposit of ratifications by the Republic of China, France, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and the United States of America, and by a majority of the other signatory states. A protocol of the ratifications deposited shall thereupon be drawn up by the government of the United States of America, which shall communicate copies thereof to all the signatory states. The states signatory to the present charter which ratify it after it has come into force will become original members of the United Nations on the date of the deposit of their respective ratifications. Article 111. The present charter, of which the Chinese, French, Russian, English, and Spanish texts are equally authentic, shall remain deposited in the archives of the government of the United States of America. Duly certified copies thereof shall be transmitted by that government to the governments of the other signatory states, in faith whereof the representatives of the governments of the United Nations have signed the present charter. Done at the city of San Francisco the 26th day of June, 1945. Note on amendments to Articles 23, 27, 61, 109. Amendments to Articles 23, 27, and 61 of the Charter were adopted by the General Assembly on the 17th of December, 1963, and came into force on the 31st of August, 1965. A further amendment to Article 61 was adopted by the General Assembly on the 20th of December, 1971, and came into force on the 24th of September, 1973. An amendment to Article 109, adopted by the General Assembly on the 20th of December, 1965, came into force on the 12th of June, 1968. The amendment to Article 23 enlarges the membership of the Security Council from 11 to 15. The amended Article 27 provides that decisions of the Security Council on procedural matters shall be made by an affirmative vote of 9 members, formerly 7, and on all other matters by an affirmative vote of 9 members, formerly 7, including the concurring votes of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. The amendment to Article 61, which entered into force on the 31st of August, 1965, enlarged the membership of the Economic and Social Council from 18 to 27. The subsequent amendment to that article, which entered into force on the 24th of September, 1973, further increased the membership of the Council from 27 to 54. The amendment to Article 109, which relates to the first paragraph of that article, provides that a general conference of member states, for the purpose of reviewing the Charter, may be held at a date and place to be fixed by a 2/3 vote of the members of the General Assembly and by a vote of any 9 members, formerly 7, of the Security Council. Paragraph 3 of Article 109, which deals with the consideration of a possible review conference during the 10th regular session of the General Assembly, has been retained in its original form in its reference to a vote of any 7 members of the Security Council, the paragraph having been acted upon in 1955 by the General Assembly at its 10th regular session and by the Security Council